Now, the study of psychopathy is scientific and multi-method. There are instruments for use with populations in in-person interviews and for data collection online. There are linguistic analysis and text analyses. And there are a number of neuroscience methods and other investigations of biomarkers used to identify psychopathy. Let's start by taking a look at some of the instruments used to measure behavior in in-person interviews and online. Hare's psychopathy checklist, the revised version, is an extremely widely used instrument to measure psychopathy. Essentially, an interviewer scores the participant on 20 dimensions, with a score ranging from 0 if it doesn't apply at all, to 1 if there's a partial match or mixed information, and 2 if there is a reasonably good match to the person. If the scores across the 20 dimensions add up to be 30 or over, the person is considered a psychopath. Scores from 21 to 29 are considered medium, and low psychopathy is a score up to 20. So we'll next take a look at these different dimensions of psychopathy. Hare's psychopathy checklist has been referred to as the gold standard for assessing psychopathy. The first 5 dimensions assess a number of personality traits that are higher in people with psychopathy, and they also tend to make them socially adept. First, glibness, superficial charm. This charming personality allows them to game situations. Second, grandiose sense of self-worth. This allows them to participate in ventures such as business ventures that are very risky with an extreme sense of confidence. Third, a need for stimulation. This compels them to explore new things purely for the fun of it. Pathological lying is related in that they lie not just to cover their asses for doing stupid stuff, but almost out of boredom. Fifth, conning, manipulation. This is reflected in behavior that draws in vulnerable people and deceives them, as opposed to behavior that's authentic and requires an individual to present in a vulnerable fashion, which is unlikely to happen here. Next, several features reflect affective or interpersonal difficulties with some moral relevance. 6, lack of remorse or guilt. A lack of remorse or guilt is shown by a lack of expression of negative affect around bad events that they cause. 7, shallow affect. Here, they might put on the negative emotion, but only because they've picked up that that's the normal thing to do. So they quickly lose it when in private. 8, callous, lack of empathy. Low emotionality in the face of distressing events is characteristic of callousness and a lack of empathy. 9, a parasitic lifestyle. Here, most people are disturbed by the thought of inconveniencing others. They have a sense, usually by attending to others' negative distress, that when they exploit them, it hurts them. And this activates the nervous system in a way that produces aversive sensations. In psychopathy, this is not the case, and those signals are not occurring. So what seems to most people as parasitic or exploiting seems to them comfortable or what they can get away with. 10, poor behavioral control. Poor behavioral control makes learning better alternative ways to act extremely difficult. The psychopath is challenged by an inability to ever get ahead of his Number 11 on the checklist is promiscuous sexual behavior. Hypersexuality is one of the lifestyle features that are readily detectable and potentially the symptoms of a related disorder, like bipolar disorder or schizoaffective disorder. 12 is early behavioral problems. These are certainly a feature and can fit with oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. 13 is lack of realistic long-term goals, and this points to the combination of grandiosity and lack of behavioral control that's characteristic of the condition. Impulsivity is a classic but also interestingly contradictory feature of psychopathy. There's clearly a dimension of psychopathy that is cold and calculated. Murders by psychopaths are known for being instrumental, not impassioned. However, there is this other dimension to the condition that's characterized by a lack of planning, poor behavioral control, a need for stimulation. These fit alongside impulsivity. They're a cluster. Number 15, irresponsibility. This is about actions that don't reflect accountability. 16 is failure to accept responsibility for own actions. In this case, this is about when things go wrong, the individual fails to accept that one did it and is responsible for it, and therefore doesn't attempt to rectify it. Number 17, many short-term marital relationships. This is another lifestyle feature, a series of short marriages. It reflects many of the habits of mind and behavioral patterns that we've already listed. 18 is juvenile delinquency, and this is a separate dimension from early behavior problems. 19 is revocation of conditional release. So this means that the person has exhibited that they reoffended after being allowed out on parole. So this item is in the scale for the purposes of use in a prison environment. Number 20 is criminal versatility, and this is the last item on the checklist. This means that the person is an excellent criminal, as criminals go, in multiple domains, from theft, for example, to fraud, arson, spousal abuse, murder, for example. You saw the video with John Ronson, who visited Al, the corporate psychopath, and observed several of these traits. In particular, the ones correlating with narcissism were strong. Factor analysis of scores on this instrument tend to produce two factors. Factor 1 captures traits dealing with the interpersonal and affective or emotional deficits of psychopathy. For example, shallow affect, superficial charm, manipulativeness, lack of empathy. And this factor is correlated with narcissistic personality disorder. This factor, factor 1, is associated with extroversion and positive affect, social potency, low anxiety, low stress reaction, low empathy, and low suicide risk. Factor 2, on the other hand, is related instead to antisocial behavior. For example, criminal versatility, impulsiveness, irresponsibility, poor behavioral control, juvenile delinquency, and social deviance, sensation seeking, and there's a high risk of suicide with factor 2. Nevertheless, the two factors are themselves highly correlated and considered to stem from the same underlying condition of psychopathy.